The island of Sodor is surrounded by beautiful blue sea. It has fields of green and sandy yellow beaches. There are rivers, streams and lots of trees where the birds sing. There are windmills and a coal mine and docks where visitors to the island arrive. The island also has lots and lots of railway lines. Who's that puffing down the track? It's Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the island of Sodor. All the engines on the island of Sodor look forward to Harvest Festival time. But most of all, they look forward to the Fat Controller's Harvest Firework display. The Fat Controller came to see Thomas and James.
James, you are to collect the fireworks from the depot.
James was overjoyed. Thomas wasn't happy at all. But I wanted to collect the fireworks, Thomas pouted. The Fat Controller chose me because I'm as red as a rocket and twice as grand. James steamed proudly across the countryside. Brightest and best, brightest and best, he hummed happily to himself. He was having a wonderful day. Thomas was still upset when he arrived at the shunting yards. Bother James, he grouched, and he biffed the trucks crossly around the yard. When James arrived at the depot, he was very excited. The wagons were all ready for him, filled safely to the top with fireworks. James was coupled up with the precious cargo, and he steamed away. Thomas shunted the last truck crossly into place. The trucks were glad that job was finished. James happily steamed along. He was thinking about the fireworks. He was imagining all the sparkles, flashes and shooting stars when suddenly James ground to a halt. I will have to go and call for help, said his driver. Thomas puffed back into Knapford Station as Gordon was letting off his passengers. Children and grown-ups from all over the island had come to see the fireworks. Seeing the children cheered Thomas up. But the Fat Controller looked concerned.
James is broken down, he said. You must collect him, Thomas, and bring him back, or the firework display will be cancelled.
Oh, no, cried Thomas. Then all the children will be sad. And he set off to collect James. Thomas puffed across the countryside. Even with his light on, Thomas knew he had to be very careful. Thomas found James broken down on the track. Hello, busted boiler, teased Thomas. You don't look very useful now. James was upset. But when Thomas got behind James, he couldn't see ahead. You will have to look out for me, said Thomas. But James was cross. You said I wasn't useful, he pouted. But if the fireworks don't get to Knapford Station, puffed Thomas, the display will be cancelled. James didn't want the children to be sad, so he agreed to look out for Thomas. And they set off together. When the track was straight and clear, James called out, "Go faster!" And Thomas did. Soon they were working happily together and making good time. The Fat Controller checked his watch. There was still no sign of Thomas or James. "It's very late," he thought. "It's almost the children's bedtime." Even Gordon was worried. "I'll have to cancel the display," said the Fat Controller. So the disappointed children started to board the coaches. At last they could see the signal lights. The signal had turned red. Thomas and James stopped.
"Why would the signal be red?"
"Maybe a passenger train is coming through," puffed Thomas.
"Gordon must be taking the children back,"
cried James. Thomas and James were very upset.
"We're here,"
they cried, and sounded their whistles as loudly as they could. But no one could hear them. The children were all on board. Gordon was ready to depart. Then Thomas had a bright idea. "Send up a rocket," he told his driver. So his driver carefully lit a rocket. He stood well back as it whooshed into the sky. The rocket burst into stars.
"A sparkling dragon,"
cried the Fat Controller.
"It must be Thomas and James." "Stop, Gordon," he said. "The firework display is back on."
The junction signal turned to green, and Thomas and James were soon on their way. James and Thomas were soon at the station. The children cheered.
"Good work, Thomas,"
cried James happily. "And good work, James," agreed Thomas.
"Good work, both of you,"
said the Fat Controller. That night, Thomas and James watched the fireworks together.
"I think we are both useful engines,"
said James proudly. "But we are most useful when we work together," puffed Thomas. Percy and the Funfair. It was a beautiful morning on the island of Sodor. All the engines were very excited. It was the day of the Fat Controller's Funfair. Children would be coming from far and wide. There was to be a special visit from the Chinese dragon. Percy was delighted. He thought the Chinese dragon was the most exciting thing of all. The Fat Controller arrived at Tidmouth. He had come to give the engines their jobs. Edward was to pull the merry-go-round, Henry the roller coaster, Gordon the fairground folk, Toby the bumper cars. James and Emily were to pull the Ferris wheel,
"And Thomas," boomed the Fat Controller, "you are to collect the fireworks and the Chinese dragon."
"What's my job, sir?" asked Percy hopefully.
"You are to collect coal from the coaling plant. You must fill all the hoppers at the stations," ordered the Fat Controller. "A railway can't run without coal," he added. "This is a very important job."
The Fat Controller left, and all the engines were excited. All except Percy. "Coal!" he sighed. And as he watched his friends leave for their exciting jobs, Percy felt very left out. Percy chuffed sadly over to the coal plant. This didn't feel like an important job at all. When Percy arrived, he could see a long line of trucks.
"I wish I was pulling something exciting,"
grumbled Percy.
"Not boring old coal trucks."
Percy buffered up and pulled out of the depot. Percy stopped at a signal by a school. Toby puffed past pulling flatbeds full of bumper cars. The children in the playground clapped and cheered. Then Edward chuffed by with the merry-go-round. The children cheered even louder. Percy thought that Toby and Edward were having a wonderful time. Then an idea flew into his funnel.
Maybe Toby and Edward need some help. Helping friends is much more important than delivering coal,
he wished. So Percy didn't deliver the coal. He left his trucks and he steamed after his friends as quickly as he could. Toby and Edward stopped at a red signal. Percy puffed up alongside.
Do you need any help?
He tooted hopefully. No, thank you, Percy, said Toby. We can do it, chuffed Edward. Percy was disappointed. Further up the line, Percy saw Emily and James. They were taking the Ferris wheel.
That looks like fun,
tooted Percy.
I'm sure they'll need some help.
Percy caught up with James and Emily. This is going to be the biggest wheel ever, chirruped Emily. Emily and James were having a splendid time. But James and Emily didn't need help either. Percy was upset. Then Percy saw Gordon waiting at a junction. Gordon was pulling the fairground folk, but he didn't need any help either. Percy saw Henry crossing the bridge. Henry was happily pulling the roller coaster. Finally, Percy saw Thomas waiting at a signal. He was carrying the fireworks and the Chinese dragon.
That looks like the most fun of all,
gasped Percy. But even Thomas didn't need any help. Percy was more disappointed than ever. Then there was trouble. Percy had spent so much time trying to help that he hadn't delivered any coal. Percy saw James. He looked very sad.
There's no coal at the stations, he wished. We've all run out of coal.
Bust my boiler, cried Percy.
If the engines don't get some coal, the fun fair won't open. All the children will be sad and it's all my fault.
Percy knew what he had to do. He had to pick up his trucks and deliver the coal as quickly as he could. Percy wished all over the island delivering coal to his friends. Soon, everyone's boiler was bubbling and their pistons were pounding. The engines were back on track. The fun fair was ready just in time. Percy finished his last delivery of coal and arrived at the fun fair as the fireworks began. The rockets soared, the band played, and the Chinese dragon danced. All the children were delighted.
The Fat Controller was right,
tooted Percy.
Delivering the coal is a very important job.
Thomas and the Lighthouse. It was the Harvest Festival celebration on the island of Sodor. There was to be a big firework party in the evening. All the engines had special jobs, and they were all very excited. The Fat Controller came to Tidmouth Sheds.
Thomas, you must take a new light bulb to the lighthouse.
Yes, sir, tooted Thomas.
The bulb must get to the lighthouse before dark, so that ships at sea can find their way safely home to Sodor. The light bulb will break easily. You must go slowly and carefully, the Fat Controller added.
So Thomas puffed quickly away to the warehouse. Thomas started to daydream about the big party. There would be clowns, the choir would be singing, and he'd see the wonderful display of fireworks. Thomas chuffed towards the warehouse. He was very excited. Thomas collected the light bulb. Then he set off slowly and carefully as the Fat Controller had told him. Thomas slowed down at every bend. And chuffed carefully through every junction. Thomas stopped at a signal. Emily was there. She was pulling the merry-go-round. She was very excited. "The fireworks are going to start when it gets dark," she cried. Thomas wanted to be back in time to see the fireworks, but the lighthouse was on the far side of the island. It was a long way, and it would take a long time to get there. Then an idea flew into Thomas's funnel. "I'm sure the light bulb wouldn't break if I went just a little faster," he chuffed. And so Thomas speeded up, just a little. Thomas puffed along. He saw James at the water tower. James had trucks and trucks of fireworks.
This is gonna be the biggest firework party ever,
James whistled happily. Now Thomas wanted to see the fireworks even more. "I'm sure I can go just a little faster," he chuffed. So Thomas speeded up, just a little more. Thomas chuffed faster still. The bulb started to rattle and shake on his flatbed. Every time Thomas met another engine, he became more and more excited. Henry huffed along with swings and a seesaw.
"It's going to be a wonderful party,"
puffed Henry. Thomas went a little faster. Then he met Toby with the coconut shy. "See you at the firework party, Thomas," he rang. Thomas went a little faster. He saw Percy with carriages of children in fancy dress. The children were very excited. "See you, Thomas!" cried the children. Now, Thomas wanted to be back for the firework party more than ever. Before Thomas knew it, he was puffing very fast. Then there was trouble. Harvey was replacing some tracks. Workmen had put a barrier across the line. Thomas was now going too fast to stop safely. He bashed into the barrier and the light bulb broke. "Cinders and ashes!" cried Thomas. "The lighthouse will not have its light and the ships won't be safe at sea." Thomas knew what he must do. Thomas puffed quickly back to the warehouse to collect a new light bulb. He knew now he would be too late to see the fireworks. Thomas had to stop at a signal. Edward was waiting. He was very excited. "I'm off to collect the Chinese dragon," he tooted. But all Thomas could think about was getting the new light bulb. With the new light bulb safely on board, Thomas set off slowly and carefully. He knew he must deliver this bulb safely to the lighthouse. So when Toby passed with the choir, practicing their songs, and when Edward passed with the Chinese dragon, Thomas didn't think about the firework party at all. Not once. Thomas arrived at the lighthouse just in time. The bulb was quickly unloaded. "Thank you, Thomas," said. He knew he had missed the firework party completely. Then Thomas came to the top of a hill, and he beamed brightly. The ship's lights twinkled in the harbour, and the Saint Catherine wheels. Thomas thought it looked as wonderful as the fireworks.